Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Attack on Titan video. This is going to be my review for Attack on Titan Final Season, The Final Chapters, Special 1. So, complicated title to basically be like it's the second last Attack on Titan kind of part of the story. The final special 2, I believe, is airing on Saturday, so it's like 2 days away, and I will review that close-ish to the time, probably maybe Sunday. That'll be what I do for that video. But yeah, probably some explanation needed here because I did not review this when it actually initially released, and part of that was just that if you saw my review for the ending of, was it season 4 part 2, I was very much ready for it to end. And so the second that the announcement kind of came out that the next Attack on Titan thing was not going to be the last, and that there'd be another pretty big break until the actual last thing, I just made the decision at that point to be like, I'm just waiting and I'll review the 2 specials back to back, which is exactly what I am doing here. So, it has been a while, and in the gap between these releases, I haven't really rewatched Attack on Titan or anything like that. I'm just in that mode where, like, I want to see the ending and kind of see where we're at. So you'll probably know if you watched my Season 4 reviews that I've had my doubts about what Attack on Titan is doing kind of as it approaches its ending. I've loved the first 3 seasons in particular, have been like, I think, literally sort of like best in class type stuff. But season 4, I feel, has kind of very much brought the series a little bit more down to earth. I haven't been absolutely blown away by the trajectory of the story. And my worries, I think, specifically surrounding how on earth they're going to get, I think, a satisfying ending out of this still completely remains. Even after this special part 1, I'm still like, I'm not sure I see exactly what they're doing. A lot of my concerns about, say, like the presentation of Eren as a character and how they still seem to be hiding parts of like why he's doing what he's doing, and they're kind of setting the stage for, okay, when he finally opens up and actually talks about this after whatever happens, the end of the conflict, there's a lot riding on what he says and how much of what we assume to be the case right now is true, and then what are more of the true aspects of what's going on. I think we're getting more of the case. Like I said, the first 10-15 minutes of this special showed us, I think, a little bit about kind of more of what they're doing with Eren. But I still would say that this focus as we go into the ending on effectively this, you know, cycle of hatred plot of like, as we know from like what the history of like the initial, you know, what was initially done with the Titan powers and Eldia against the rest of the world, and then how that was sort of like reversed then over time, and now this is the attempt to kind of reverse that again. It is just this kind of going back and forth battle, and we're discussing, or at least attempting to discuss, you know, how do we actually end this kind of conflict that has, like, you know, discrimination effectively. How do we end this? And Eren kind of talks about that to a certain degree here, with the idea of, well, the simplest solution that would result in the least loss of life would actually be for all Eldians to be wiped out, but he just refuses to accept that as being a valid solution to this because of, you know, why he fights. So he seems to have decided to do the kind of reverse of that of, well, if I don't want to wipe out all of my my race, I'm going to wipe out everyone else, and that will achieve, you know, true freedom. Because that's so far what we're being presented with Eren, is that he is all about freedom. But they seem to be suggesting and very much setting up the idea here that he is basically through the paths and kind of in a way what he knows from what he saw when he like kissed Historia's hand, and that they changed him because he seems to now know that what's going to happen as we go forward is just predestined. And I'm not sure, I forget if we know the full extent of what he knows and so on, in the sense that, like, as he goes into this battle, does he know how this specific battle is going to end, and he's just playing his part because this is how it is? I just struggle with the idea that at a core level, this character who is all about freedom is kind of just locked into this path, and just the simple kind of reverse kind of situation with Eren of like, oh, he's all about freedom, but haha, he's actually the least free person in the world, I don't think is kind of good enough. And so I do feel, in a way, going into this, like, I'm almost still waiting or wanting some sort of a twist that Eren can actually reverse this situation. I think I talked about it in quite a few of my, I think, season 4 reviews, especially since we got the reveal that, like, the origin of Titan powers is that kind of insect type thing. And, you know, effectively the idea is if you specifically destroyed that and removed the power from Eldians, that changes something and at least leads to some complexity going forward. If it's just an acceptance that, like, Titan powers are gone and now it's just people, like, you call them the devils, but they literally cannot do that thing anymore, doesn't that actually change things? But they have, in a way, to almost simplify the story so it's not just sort of like mired in murky waters of, like, both sides have done stuff just as bad as each other, have settled on this idea, well, I guess the rumbling was kind of the only thing that Eren was ever really going to do, because they roughly have come up with reasons for why, like, literally just a showcase of the rumbling wasn't enough. Just destroying all of the, like, the fleets effectively of the other nations was maybe never going to be enough, because Eren wants to achieve a situation where Paradis will never be attacked, rather than they won't be attacked for a long time. So it's just one of those things where, like I said, a lot is riding on when we get to the ending here, is if they justify enough about what you know, Eren's motivations are to sort of almost like save the character in the end in some ways, because I've never liked the idea that, like, he's just now shifted into just being the villain just because he saw the future and doesn't seem to be able to avert it. Somewhere along that writing trajectory, I just fundamentally do not like the idea that the character can't actually do anything in a way on his own anymore. And so I am waiting to see what actually happens here, because the rest of the characters, like, you know, Armin, Mikasa and everyone, they seem to be at least holding out some hope that they can convince Eren to kind of stop this. But by the end of this special, they seem to be just set into the idea of, okay, they're going to try a conversation, but based on what he's told them up to now, he's saying that you are free to oppose me because I care about freedom, so I won't take freedom away from you. That's why he's kind of allowing, say, like, the people who can transform into Titans to still transform into Titans, even though they point out that theoretically he could just stop that if he wants to just, you know, put restrictions on us to help his goals. But no, he's actually allowing them the fair chance to fight, because he's not being a hypocrite in that way about, like, that kind of freedom. Like, I have my freedom to do what I'm doing, you have your freedom to oppose me if you so wish. Now, is there a sense of, you know, is he just playing this role of, like, effectively this conflict will unite the nations, the world, the sides against him, and this will lead to some sort of a peace? There was a bit of a kind of positive sense of, like, you know, when we finally got to the point and you have the commander guide there, and he over the radio just announces to everyone that, like, this thing that is arriving to us is our own hatred towards Eldia kind of, like, reflected back on us. Like, we have caused this to be the case. What can, you know, we did this to ourselves, basically. So like that was actually like a quite an interesting scene, because yeah, like the point is that no one so far kind of along the path has made a decision to, like, maybe we should stop this constant like cycle back and forth of like whoever's in power constantly keeps the other down, and then the people that are down will rise up and go against them, and the tables will turn. And in a way, that's where, you know, the main cast seem to be, you know, in terms of effectively going against their own side to sort of stop this to a certain degree in the name of peace, but in terms of just saving as many lives as they possibly can, is like a little bit of that. And I'm also just kind of thinking with this show about sort of its tone, its approach to be very realistic in many ways, complex, but ultimately quite like negative in tone, of like bad stuff happens and it will always just happen, and that seems to be the kind of path they're heading down. And I'm just wondering, like, where is a bit more of that optimism? Like, is there going to be any idealism as we approach the end, or are we just destined for that sort of unsatisfactory outcome? It's just gonna, everything will be bittersweet, sort of like, at best. That's kind of what I'm hoping for in the end, is just that it's not as just like lacking in happiness or hope as I maybe think it's going to be. That will Attack on Titan in the end just stick to the kind of way it's been doing things, or will it be a little bit more brave and actually have a bit of hope and optimism? Because some of the stuff that I liked the most in this special was actually the kind of little character moments, in a way almost the little romance moments, like Armin and Annie kind of talking and blushing to each other, and then they pretty quickly followed that scene up with Annie and Mikasa talking, and they're kind of talking around it, but it basically kind of being Mikasa talking to Annie about Armin, and Annie talking to Mikasa about Eren, and like, what's going on here. Those were nice because it felt like for even a second we just got out of the mire that is like everything going on, and just had a bit of like, this is hopeful, fun, optimistic. Like, I'd like to see some of these relationships maybe happen, but you know, is just Attack on Titan just going to remain, you know, as is, or will, you know, how will they approach the ending here? Because I really struggle with the idea that we'll just have peace at the end, but I also really struggle with probably even more with the idea that the result of this is just that the conflict basically still goes on, but because there are a massive amount less people in the world, because the rumbling has done as much damage as it's done already, that it's just diminished the conflict a bit, but in a way, in time, it will rise up again. And that, going back to the whole path thing, that it does seem to be almost locked in, that there is no way to actually truly change things. And I hope they do that well enough, that the show at least has an acceptable ending, because I don't know what the ending is. I haven't read the manga. Even after all this time, I have not read the manga, so I don't actually know what happens at the end. But of course, I can't say that I haven't heard some of the reaction from manga readers to the ending, and the constant debate about actually, like, is it a good ending, or is it, you know, a terrible ending? So it's a controversial ending, and what are we actually going to do here? Now, from what I've heard, like, I think the final special is going to be like pretty much like an hour and a half, give or take. So they'll have the time that they need to do this, I guess, giant battle, and then whatever sort of epilogue they decide to do to end the series on. We'll see what exactly happens. So, like I said, I'm going to review the final special much closer to the airing than, of course, this one. Probably Sunday, hopefully, when I do that. But anything else to talk about with this? Like I said, the opening sequence I thought was actually really good because I thought it actually got in depth on Eren in a way that we kind of hadn't done in a while. The idea of, you know, him knowing that it is part of like the path I have to take to save this boy, but like I meant to save him here in this moment from being beaten, but does that matter when he will just die to the rumbling when I activate it? And then he leaves, but then it seems like he goes back and actually fulfills his actual part of the plan. And there's this kind of weird sense of like, but did you have to go back? Like, would that have changed anything? And you of course see that he hates that, in a way, this is what he has to do. This is the way that it has to be. But again, that is the kind of complexity of Eren as a character here, and why I think like they need to do some good character stuff with him in the final special to justify in a way how in the background secretive they've been about kind of some of what he's about. So hopefully that works. But it was super tragic, of course, to already see the idea of like the treatment of this boy prior, and then his fate to just be trampled by the rumbling. Like it was an impressive sequence to sort of highlight, you know, what they've done up to now. And again, it was sort of like a different take on effectively kind of what they did in terms of like the start of season 4 and the end of season 4 of like Eren's big return, attacking Marley effectively, and then having like I believe the last season 4 episode, part 2, was effectively Eren walking around Paradis and kind of seeing the kind of humanity on display, but realizing what he's going to have to do. And this was kind of like another version of that, effectively. But yeah, after this, we basically build to the whole idea of like the hero squad here effectively has to get the flying boat kind of ready to go, fueled and eventually repaired to get away before the rumbling comes for them, because this is how they're going to attack the founding titan, basically Eren. Now there's obviously a bunch of stuff that happens here. There's a lot of discussion, this is where a lot of the, you know, Armin Annie scenes happen, Annie Mikasa scene happens, but we eventually build to Flock makes his return, randomly shoots his gun, but he hits basically the fuel tank of the ship effectively, and Mikasa kills him, and he dies still being sort of loyal to the cause. Effectively, this moment of our hero characters realize that they are going against their people in opposing Eren. And Flock, of course, was one of the people most loyal to Eren and the sort of like Eldian cause, and they've had to kind of kill him. And it's this, you know, showing the kind of conflict of this whole situation, that like this is what we've had to do. And it gets kind of brought up as we go on, like Connie mentioning that like I've had to kill people I trained with, as well as like people I've just been around recently. Like what have we all had to become in all of this? And it's like, okay, I get it, you're ramping up the stakes, but like, are we just completely losing all the optimism and hope here? Like let's hope they don't forget all of that. But the big build up here is to the idea that they're delayed enough that the rumbling is here. They need to hold back the first line of the rumbling at least, to allow more time for the ship to be prepared and take off. And there's a few recommendations for who's going to do this, like, oh, I'll do it, no, I'll do it. But in the end, Hanji decides this is her time to shine. She gets her moment, as many other members of the Survey Corps have got before. She is going to do it. And so we get the kind of incredible last stand of Hanji. She does pass on the leadership of the Survey Corps to Armin, which was a pretty nice moment. Acknowledging again what it's about. Survey, it's about the knowledge of the world, and he represents that the most, it's the right choice. And she takes out a bunch of the line of giant titans coming up close. Amazing like music playing. They most for the most part went like all out with the animation. You could tell it was probably a bit of a struggle here because the size of her compared to the size of them, it's a lot more difficult to in a way showcase that compared to someone on with ODM gear taking out normal sized titans, or even like people as we saw in like season 2, 3 and stuff like that. So but overall I thought it was pretty impressive what they did. She kind of catches fire at some point and goes out, you know, in a kind of blazing inferno, having given them just enough time to actually take off. There's some complexities in all of this. Like Annie initially is going to refuse to fight, so she ends up going off, and she takes Falco and Gabby with her. But it's clear they're going to somehow rejoin the battle because we get some of the details about, oh yeah, the female Titan, if fed parts of basically the other powerful Titans, will gain some aspect of that ability. And then Falco, of course, we know is like has inherited some Titan stuff, and has drank Zeke's spinal fluid, so he's getting this kind of path, almost future vision, that he will one day fly. And this seems to kind of inspire Annie, who is already having, I think, quite a lot of doubts about, you know, what she should or shouldn't do. But it seems like they are going to rejoin this fight in some way. We'll see exactly when that happens. I'm assuming probably a third of the way through the final special, maybe halfway through, they'll show up to kind of save the day, give the kind of glimmer of hope, and you know that's the kind of way they're going to do it here. But yeah, big kind of moment as like the first part of this special kind of like ends with the death of Hanji, and then the second kind of part, there's not as much time focused on this one. We get a lot of kind of discussion about like, you know, what are we doing? Are we okay with kind of fighting Eren? And then they're actually brought into the paths, and they initially tried to convince Eren that like, here's a bunch of reasons for why you don't have to do what you're doing, but and they even see off in the distance the younger Eren within the paths, and they try to run up to him, but they can never get there. They end up like behind the people that they kind of ran away from initially. And this is where it is said that, yes, you know, I will not restrict you. You have the freedom to fight for freedom in the same way that I have the freedom to do what I'm doing here. Stop me if you can, but know that the only way you are going to stop me is by killing me effectively. So that is the setup for sort of like Eren as the villain that is taking freedom to a certain extreme, obviously. Will be interesting to see when, I suppose, they do defeat him, if there are final words, what exactly this was all about, like I've been talking about with what the correct approach is for Eren as a character, what way should he be written, and all of this stuff. It's definitely interesting. But then, yeah, the final sequence of this part is that we see the rumbling arriving as like a train with people kind of pull in, and they're all prepared to be trampled, but there has been a kind of response here. So there's going to be a bombing raid against the rumbling titans and, you know, Eren basically. And it seems like a pretty good plan. Like the whole fleet is coming out, they're in the air. Obviously the strength of the titans is obviously that they're on the ground. So by attacking from the air, really, really high up, what can they actually do? And so the first strike comes in, but then Eren does actually respond. And so what he does is he basically like remolds effectively the Beast Titan, and the Beast Titan throws I guess it's its parts of Titan armor, because obviously there was no like rocks up at them, and takes out all of the airships. So the final kind of hope for humanity seemingly falls, but this is when the flying boat arrives with our heroes. They've only just about have enough fuel. Everyone has to like dive out last minute, and they land on basically the spine of Eren's kind of founding Titan, and mostly this is where it ends. Like the setup here is that it's going to be, I guess, Levi versus the Beast Titan for like a big final showdown. Obviously an injured, recovering Levi who it kind of feels like, yeah, this is going to be his last fight, I guess. So that's going to be an exciting one, because the rivalry between those two has been set up pretty well. Otherwise, like the main takeaway you'd probably have is just like Armin wanting to speak to Eren. From previous material, there's obviously the setup of like Mikasa and Eren, but this is where we get into the whole idea of like Mikasa, I guess, is going to have to play a huge role in this, but I do feel that they've often struggled to do a kind of in-depth characterization of Mikasa, and because like a lot of the ideas what we're exploring with her is that because she's an Ackerman, and the whole nature of like how she unlocked her powers, can she actually fight against Eren, given that she's sort of, what was it, like I forget the exact details of this, but like she's loyal to him because she unlocked her powers effectively to protect him, kind of for him. So by the nature of that power, she can't go against him as such. So she's not free to act against Eren, and kind of doesn't want to. So the setup is, will she finally do it? Now, I'm pretty convinced that if Eren is going to be, killed or defeated here, it's going to be by Mikasa finally acting against him, and I'm guessing they're going to use that as, to some degree, the learning, the moment Eren has wanted of like seeing Mikasa show that you can go past a situation where it seems like you don't have freedom. Has that been set up enough? I'm not really sure, because of course, for the most part, outside of like a question that was asked like a couple of episodes ago, it never really overly felt like the Mikasa Eren relationship was a huge focus of the show. So we'll see what they do with that in the end, but that does seem to be the direction that they're heading in. The other thing with Armin is that they're setting up that the Colossal Titan's power, which is basically the kind of nuke kind of ability when it kind of first like is summoned, that would be the final attack. If everything goes completely wrong, that is the way to actually take out Eren in the end. So I'm not sure necessarily maybe it's going to fully come to that, but we'll see. I'm guessing with that, they'll probably do a thing where maybe he considers doing it, but this is when like Annie arrives on the scene and they can fight again in like a different way. Reiner is here in action. I'm guessing they're going to give him something to do, because he's been a pretty focused on character. And then it's kind of just on the epilogue. Like, how do they do the epilogue and make it all work? Like, what is the happy ending in all of this? Like, I'm at this point just convinced, like, Eren is dead. There's no way he's getting through to the epilogue. He dies, and I just don't see any way they're not doing that. How many more of the characters do they kill? I don't think they're going to kill off Mikasa. Armin, no. Like, with Reiner, it kind of feels like, will they finally let him die? Or will they just actually be like, actually, no, he survives, and it's the right thing this time. It is good. I don't know. Will they kill more characters? It's a tough one, because there's the likes of like John, Connie. I'm not sure if you necessarily need to. So I don't know. At least of the kind of main cast, like Eren's friends, I'm not sure. Levi, I think because he's going into this injured, I'm guessing they're gonna do a thing where like he takes out the Beast Titan but kind of like dies in the process, but it is a final defeat of the Beast Titan kind of once and for all. But otherwise I'm not overly sure what way they're going to do things here. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up there. And even though like this is like an hour of content, and like usually for like an episode I probably maybe go in or around this long, I would say in general my response to a lot of this special was just that show me the next special. Like I at this point I just want to see what the ending is. My speculation has been basically the same speculation I've had since pretty much like season 4 part 2. Just show me an ending, give me an ending that I don't hate. And then I think that's the big thing here, is that if the ending is not like amazing, that's fine, because the show is still incredible because of how amazing season 1, 2, and 3 were. Aspects of season 4, yes, as well. But it's all about just the ending not being so bad it actually does impact other parts of the show. And I will say, like, with me and endings, it can often be a tricky thing for me to feel satisfied enough with endings of various things. It's not that it's impossible, but with anime and manga, I do think there is often a bit of a kind of challenge, whereas like these companies can support the writers, artists like so well, but it always feels like right at the end there's some sort of weird meddling from the companies like publishing this that just mean that the writer goes in with only like a chapter with not enough kind of time left to fully resolve their story in the way that they truly want. And I hope that doesn't turn out to be the case here. Like I've heard bits and pieces about like how like what was it, the manga volume release has like a little bit of extra content compared to when the initial chapter I think came out. There was some sort of thing where like Isayama I think put out a statement where he said he was involved to some degree with some of the final stuff here. So I don't know, will there be any changes in this adaptation compared to what the manga is? I don't know, I've no clue. But yeah, I would say I'm going into this special, you know, excited to get the ending of Attack on Titan after all of this time, because it's like, what, 10 years? Like, I think Attack on Titan Season 1, what came out in, was it 2012 or 2013? I forget, in or around that time. This is effectively 10 years, and it's time. And I hope it works out well, because, yes, I think the popularity has been a bit affected by a variety of things. Like, more recently, definitely the production kind of stuff of, like, the switch in animation studios, and then I think especially the fact that it just felt like the word final got brought up way too early compared to the amount of material that there was actually left. And so that's why we have a situation where, like, yeah, the last part of Attack on Titan is going to be Attack on Titan final season, the final chapters, final special or whatever. Like the amount of times final is going to come up is going to be kind of crazy. But they are my thoughts on the special number 1, and just in general my thoughts as we head into the finale of the Attack on Titan anime in just over 2 days. So in the comments let me know what your thoughts are, where you're at as we get to the end of Attack on Titan in the anime. But yeah, that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.